Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. It is not unheard of that the insurance sector is traditionally a male dominated industry. I'm Yvette Erston, Head of Content and Communications for CyberCube. At CyberCube, we have been working hard over the years to challenge this notion, to break the bias. For CyberCube to achieve its mission in creating analytics to quantify cyber risk, it is important for us to have a diversity of perspectives. To celebrate International Women's Day 2022 and to join the Break the Bias movement, we have invited Barbara Merry to share her views on the history of women in insurance and how this has developed over the years. Barbara Merry is a well-known figure in the insurance industry, particularly for her role as Chief Executive Officer of Hardy Underwriting Group. During her 12-year tenure at Hardy, she was responsible for all aspects of managing the Lloyd's insurance business, including the development and delivery of the business strategy, which saw the company listed on the London Stock Exchange and later acquired. Barbara now has a number of non-executive directorships, including at Paul Re, Berkshire Hathaway, Domestic and General Insurance, and Argus Group of Bermuda. She's also chairman of Ed Broking and describes herself as a business angel investor and a champion for diversity and inclusion, previously chairing the Independent Women in Insurance Network Committee. Barbara, thank you for your time in joining us today.
Welcome.
Barbara, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the insurance industry?
Thanks, Yvette. Well, I guess I've got a lot in common with many others who fell into insurance, really, arrived there very much by accident. I originally was a student of modern languages at London School of Economics. I decided that I didn't want to pursue that in my career in any way. So I became a chartered accountant over the next couple of years. I spent a couple of years working in a firm in London doing sort of post-qualification experience, but I never had any intention of being a finance director or a management accountant. And an opportunity came up to work in the Lloyd's insurance market because at that time, Lloyd's was having some very public difficulties and they were recruiting lots of accountants and lawyers to help them to develop a rule book that was comparable to what was going on elsewhere in the financial services sector, because this was the mid-80s when the Financial Services Act was about to be put onto the statute books. So I was recruited as part of this, great drive to get some accounting and legal skills. And I ended up in the Corporation of Lloyd's in August 1985, totally captivated by the insurance market, really intellectually stimulating, and the rest is history.
It's great that over that 35 years, you've really enjoyed your experience in the insurance industry. I'd like to see how has that industry changed since you joined some 35 years ago?
I think that diversity has obviously been, a hot topic over the years, more so in latter times than in the early days of my time in the Lloyd's community. There were women around then, quite a lot of them actually, but on the whole, they weren't doing really very senior roles. And I guess what I've seen over the years is a sort of proper interest in trying to promote the best person for the job rather than, somebody that your dad knows. And so there are a lot more women, particularly in more roles than there used to be, and they get a lot more credibility and responsibility than they might have done in the mid-80s. But I think probably, things do change a bit, and we've still got a bit stuck when it comes to very senior executive roles and the boardroom. We haven't got equality in the boardroom by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually quite funny. I met a former colleague recently who is also looking to be a portfolio non-executive director like myself. And he was saying that he was finding it quite challenging to find roles. And he said, I think I'm the wrong gender. And I couldn't stop myself from laughing out loud, because I thought, well, it's taken 35 years for a female to be at an advantage. Now you're welcome to our world, really, isn't it? So I think things have changed a lot, but I guess I'm disappointed that they haven't changed more in that time, and that we haven't got the kind of equality at senior executive level and in the boardroom that that is appropriate for a world where women hold up half the world. Why shouldn't they have half the say? I think I'd be interested in your views of it, because it seems to me actually one of the things that's changed is that the workplace is a bit more benign than it was. The behaviours that were thought to be acceptable all that time ago, the things that people said out loud, when you think about it now and in the context of where we are now, it was just not an acceptable environment. And although there are still exceptions to sort of what's generally considered to be appropriate, for the most part, I think it's a more benign place for women to show what they can do, to show their capabilities, and to perform well, and just be the same as any other person in the office space. But as I said, I'd be interested in how you see it.
Yeah, you raised some interesting points there. I think the environment certainly seems to have changed, certainly in the decades that I've been working in the insurance industry, which is obviously very, very powerful, very beneficial for women in particular. I think one thing that we've discussed, or I've heard people speak about, and you and I certainly, Barbara, have talked about this, is post-pandemic. Are we having a backward step? Are more people working from home, staying at home, and is it more likely to be the woman who is working at home and wanting to stay at home with a better life balance? And what the implications are for that individual in terms of career development. What have you seen to date, Barbara, with regards to post-pandemic lifestyle?
Well, I think that that was one of the things that I hoped we might touch on, because it just seems to me that women really, we have to be prepared to sort of stand up and be counted, and make sure that the kind of progress that we've seen over the last 3 decades continues. It's just, I feel that we should all just take it for granted that we can do the same as the man can, but we have to, at the same time, invest in ourselves, invest in our own capabilities, invest in our competencies, invest in our soft skills, invest in our wellness, so that we're 100% the best offering that we can be. And then there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get to move forward on that career ladder in the same way as a man can. But there's lots of factors that are important when you're wanting to sort of express your ambition. And it certainly is about competencies and your abilities and so on. But there's lots of other things that are a bit more opportunistic. You're in the right place at the right time. Did you actually manage to get the right experience as you were coming along? And one of the things that's important, I think, is visibility. If people don't see you and they don't get an opportunity to have a chat to you, they just don't know what you're capable of. And more importantly, they don't really know what you want, because there aren't, women are stereotypically very reluctant to say, I want to do this. This is how I see my career going. While their male counterparts are very much, look at me. The women tend to wait until they're noticed. And if you're not in the office space, you're not going to be noticed. And what I think is sort of beginning to emerge is that, on the whole, it's obviously not the case for everybody, but on the whole, women are electing to spend more time at home now rather than more time in the office. Where there is flexibility around how many days a week you go in, it tends to be the women that think, well, I can balance my life better if I spend more time at home. And I totally get that. But I do think that you have to bear in mind that there's possibly a price to be paid for that, that ability to balance career and home from the home, as opposed to being visible in the office. And this is something that we just got to bear in mind until people begin to understand that there is an unconscious bias around people not being visible. And so, we've just got to bear that in mind. I just don't feel that, it's a good thing for women if they elect not to be around and to have people get to know them and what they're capable of. So it's a bit of a worry that we might have made we might have a backward step inadvertently as a result of this sort of empowering of employees and this additional flexibility that we now seem to be able to have post-pandemic.
Barbara, you mentioned a few things there. You talked about unconscious bias of not being seen. You talked about differences between men and women, notice me, the way in their nature and behaviour. Another thing you also did mention was your disappointment, particularly at the board level, that there's not that female representation.
Yeah.
Why is there not that female representation? Is that because of those biases, the visibility as well, or a number of other factors?
Yeah, I mean, I think practicality dictates. When you look at all the stats, we just simply do not have the same number of senior, more mature females in the work environment as we do men, and that's obvious. They have children, and many of them don't return, perhaps because the environment isn't friendly enough to them, perhaps for their own volition, for whatever reason. Lots of people step out of the workplace, and what we've really got to do is to encourage them back into the workplace so that we can, we've got a bigger pool of people to choose from when we're looking at those sort of senior appointments. But I do think that a woman has to really accept that she's going to have to work twice as hard to get to the same place as a man. That's what I've seen in my career, and I just feel that we're just not making inroads into the boardroom. I'm very, very fortunate myself. I can't tell you how fortunate I feel to be able to have this sort of third career, if you like, as a non-executive director, participating in a number of businesses, which I really enjoy it. But for the most part, I'm the only woman around the board table, and that's a lonely place to be at times. And even if there were another non-exec, it would be helpful. But there isn't another non-exec, and there isn't another executive either. And it's difficult to explain sometimes why that's the situation. Why is it when, I can see that there are perfectly capable females in the senior management team, when there's a vacancy in the boardroom, why aren't they being given the opportunity to step up? And and I get back comments to the effect that there just aren't enough women to choose from, and the answer is, well, I just don't think you're looking hard enough, because there are enough women to choose from. But I think there's a perception that appointing a woman to the boardroom as an executive director is taking a greater risk than the equivalent man, and that's one of these sort of preconceived unconscious biases that none of us can explain, but that is what happens in practice.
Barbara, why is it important that there's more equality there? Why is it important to have more women on leadership teams, on boards, like you've referenced?
Well, it's just important to break out. It's not just important for the insurance industry. It's important for business at large, for government, for every organisation, to be able to reflect the diversity of views that are present in the communities that they're seeking to serve, or the customers that they're trying to provide for. If all you've got is a group of people who have got very similar backgrounds and experiences, they're going to think in a very similar way, and they're not going to challenge themselves in a way that would be healthy, and it just doesn't produce the best business decision, and nor indeed does it produce good business performance. What's clear from all of the research that's been done is that businesses that have diverse boards that appreciate and encourage diversity of thought, they perform better in the long run. So it's sort of what's not to like about that, really. It's just very important to have that balance. And I suppose in my heart, my spirit says, this is about doing the right thing anyway, isn't it? It's not just about business performance. It's just about getting the best person in to do the job and looking at the entire pool of skills and talents that you've got, not just the male pool of talent.
Barbara, in 5 years' time, what would you like to see happen in terms of progression?
Oh, gosh. What would I like to see? I'd like to see, on this particular point, on sort of diversity, I'd like it to be a world where we just don't talk about it anymore. It's a non-issue. There's no conversation to be had anymore about gender diversity or any other diversity for that matter, because we've dealt with it, and we're where we need to be. And where women are, they're confident in their own abilities and capabilities, and they don't feel that the workplace is, having a career and moving up the career ladder, that they don't feel that that's not the place for them, so they drop out of the workplace. So it's just where we can do what we feel we can to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and we don't have to feel crushed by the workplace. It's just it's a non-issue. We just don't talk about it anymore.
Barbara, hopefully that will be the case. And one final question, if you don't mind. For anyone watching this, for young women or aspiring women in their careers, is there any advice you would give to them as they're starting their careers and building their careers to get that position of feeling happy, being the best, bringing out the best in themselves in terms of their career development and future?
Well, I think actually, I think we've touched on a couple of the things. I think it is really important to invest in yourself. I know that it's really hard when you've got lots of demands on your time at home and you're trying to do your best in your job as well. It's very easy to put your own development right down at the bottom of the list of priorities. And what I would say is, every now and again, you've got to really look at, what you can do to give yourself the best chance of being able to move ahead. So that's what I was talking about earlier, which is investing in your own set of competencies and skills, investing in the things that you think are going to be helpful to be relevant to the organisation or the environment that you're in. Invest in your kind of understanding and experience on the soft skills side. Make sure that you're well and that you're healthy and that you're able to give physically 100%, because this is not for the faint-hearted, really. It's demanding. Physically and mentally, and so you've got to keep yourself in a good place. So you really do need to invest in yourself. And what I think is sort of curious is how, when we're in business, we talk all the time about the business plan, what it is that we're thinking for the business for the next 12 months or the next 3 years or the next 5 years. Actually, it's quite a good discipline to do that for yourself. Think about where you'd like to be in 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Write it down, because it helps to write it down. And I know that you can't necessarily say, well, I want to be, the chairman of Lloyd's. You can't sort of, decide on a role, but you can work out what the characteristics of the role are that you want. You can work out whether you want it to be, or whether you want to be able to maintain that work-life balance in a different way. You can work out what level of responsibility you might want to have. You can work out whether you believe yourself to be a natural leader, or would you be happier being a follower. You can work out actually what sort of money you need to earn in order to have the lifestyle that you want. So there's lots that you can do to put some flesh on the bones of what your future world might look like. And then you need to be thinking every time you make a career move, is this going to take me in the general direction that I want to go in order to deliver on my plan? And look at your plan frequently and update it and add more flesh to it as time goes on. I think it's really helpful. I don't think enough women really think about what the next steps are. They just, kind of accept what's offered to them. So that I think is really important. It's sort of investing and planning. I think also going back to what we were talking about earlier, I know it's really difficult to try to maintain, the home life and the work life. But if you can spend a bit more time in the office, being visible, making sure that people know what you want, what you're up for. If there's some big project, don't allow people to dismiss you from being, eligible to undertake it simply because they know that you've got a family and you've got commitments. If you're up for it, then make sure that people know, because they might not necessarily consider you if they don't know what it is that you're interested in. So make your interests and your ambitions known, be much more vocal about it. And just assume that you can do the same as the next person, and that the next step on the ladder is there for you. Don't write yourself off. Have a bit more confidence and in yourself. This is all really hard stuff, because I know that typically, women do feel like, what's the phrase? The imposter in the room. They wonder why they're there. They, wonder whether they're good enough. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. And bear in mind that your male colleagues simply won't have those uncertainties about themselves. So don't have them either. Just put your best foot forward and hope for the best.
Barbara, some fantastic pieces of advice there, and really great to hear your insight from your 35 years of experience in the industry. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
CyberCube is obviously very interested and working very hard to progress DE&I at the company. For more information on our initiatives, please go to our website, www.cybercube.com. For CyberCube, I'm Yvette Essen.